Hello everyone, time for another Wargaming update, and it's going to be a long one this time. Lots to show you, quite a lot of painting done, lots of purchases and figures, books, DVDs, all that kind of thing. So here we go, starting with three Jousting Knights. So these have all got lances tipped with coronels, rather than for combat. They are ex-Steve Barber models, now retailed through a company called CP Models. He's taken quite a lot of Steve Barber's old Rangers and added to them himself in some cases, but this particular model, because it is just one horse type, one figure type, and then you can buy 8 different heads, and the heads all have different types of crest on them, so they're quite some of them are quite spectacular. So I have chosen 3. I've got one that has got a horned helmet, one that has got a swan, and one that has a crowned lion, and try to paint them up inspired by a very old book, Lillian and Fred Funkin's book on knights in the time of chivalry. It's in French, which is I can just about understand, but mainly got it for the plates, which are really, even after how long ever it's been, 40 years maybe I bought it, still find them inspiring. So I've tried to paint the heraldic designs based on illustrations in that book. They've actually got a section on the joust, and yeah, pretty pleased with the way they turned out. I chose some fairly simple heraldry, with the exception of the knight with the it's mainly yellow and black with the double-headed eagle in one segment, and came out all right. Nothing spectacular, but yeah, going to use these for the eventually for crossed lances, but I'm not entirely sure how that game is going to turn out. So I'm getting everything ready for it before I actually try a game out. So I've got a few other figures I painted up I'm going to show you next, and also I've been working on some buildings and things which I haven't got finished yet, but I want to get all that done before I actually try the game out, because I have a horrible feeling that I'm not going to be too impressed by the rules, and if that happens then it's going to kind of deaden my appetite for getting the rest of the project finished. So I want to get everything complete before I even try the rules out. Anyway, so on to the next few figures that I've got ready for that. These are some more ex-Steve Barber models, now retailed through CP Models. A king and a queen seated watching a joust, and 2 heralds who are given different liveries to represent the sides that had organised the joust. Basically, again, I got that from the Lillian and Fred Funkin book. Yeah, the king in particular, I think these are quite heavily caricatured. I don't really see any reason why a king would be wearing armour in order to watch a joust, although maybe he intends taking part in it later. But yeah, they're going to be just a little bit of sort of scenery really for the game. And on that subject, I've got some more spectators painted up as well that I'll show you next. And again, these are more ex-Steve Barber models. 6 princesses going to be standing in the stands watching the knights joust. Yeah, quite pleased with the way these turned out. I was trying to get the the fabrics of the clothing to look a bit more like silk or something like that. It sort of worked to an extent. And then I also got a CP Models put in a freebie model that I painted up as well, so I'll just show you that one individual model next. Okay, so this is a figure of a Squire that CP Models very kindly threw in as a freebie, and very thankful for that. So as I say, now I reckon I've got more than enough figures to play a game of Cross Lances, so I've just got to get some little bits of terrain painted up. I must say though that I'm having real issues. I don't know if it's just one of those elements of getting old now, but everything seems to change or become redundant unnecessarily. Seems to me. I had to get a new laptop, which was necessary because it was really getting flaky and unreliable, kept shutting down, and in particular the internet connection seemed to be very tenuous. So I got a new laptop, and then found that the printer that I had, which is perfectly viable and workable, and really really like the printer I've got, doesn't work on the new laptop, and it's just so old now that you can't get a driver for it. Hewlett Packard, the manufacturer of the printer, don't produce a driver for it anymore, so I can't even download a driver onto my new laptop to get it to work, and I need the printer in order to print off lots of cards and things like that for the game. So it's a real pain. Until I get a new printer, I think what I'm going to have to do is keep my old laptop and just use it as a way of getting the printer to operate, so I can print things out when I need them. So it just seems to be one of those. There's been loads of things happening like that to me recently in the last month or two. Bits of technology that have now become sort of redundant, and it just winds me up. It really does. Another thing that you probably know if you watch my channel regularly that I like to do occasionally is to do little bits of animation, and all the animation software is no longer supported. So if I want to carry on with that hobby, I'm going to have to purchase new animation software. Anyway, that's by the by. So let's go on to the next group of figures that I've got painted up. These are the last of the Berbers that I purchased at Colours exactly a year ago. It was Colours again this last weekend gone, which unfortunately I didn't go to this year. Didn't get the opportunity to go, but yeah, so it's taken me a year to get through that last purchase. Anyway, this is the command figures for the group, and yeah, really quite pleased with the way they turned out. The figure holding the rifle up comes with a variety of options, not only a variety of heads that you can give him, but also different weapons and different the arm can be different as well. So I picked the arm holding a rifle. I could have given him another banner like the chap in the back there with the green banner, but unfortunately the what would you call it, like the flagpole, the staff, was slightly damaged on the second version, so I went with a rifle. I need more figures with weapons than I do ones carrying flags, so that worked out all right anyway. The flag itself wasn't terribly impressed with. It was another one of those ones where the paper is very easily damaged, and just bending it and so on creates white patches and things, which luckily I was able to find a paint that shades of paint that matched the colour of the of the flag quite well, so it's difficult to see now really where that damage occurred. And yeah, what else to say about them? It's gone from my mind. I was going to say one other thing about these, but anyway, I'm going to later on. I'm going to show you some more figures that I purchased. Oh yeah, who are they from? They're 1898 miniatures, which are a Spanish company, but you can get them through Empress Miniatures in the UK. So that's where I bought these, and I bought my other purchase, but you can buy them direct from Spain if you're so inclined. Okay, on to the next thing. This is a group of Maasai warriors, figures from Wargames Foundry. So I'm really building up quite a large Maasai army now. I wasn't over impressed, I have to say, with Blood and Steel rules. I tried a game out, which you may have seen some time ago now. Tried those rules out using my Maasai as one side. They're not really a suitable army for a game like Congo either, because they rarely used missile weapons, reserved bows and throwing spears and so on for young boys and old men. So all the kind of missile rules in Congo won't apply. So I'm going to try out eventually a set of rules that I got on a bring and buy stand in Plymouth some time ago, called In the Heart of Africa by Chris Pears, whose name you might be familiar with. They've got army lists for Maasai in that, and they look a pretty good set of rules. So I've still got probably about 100 figures in my lead mountain to paint up. I chose the ones that all had the framed ostrich feather headdress, and some of them have got collars as well, which were black vulture feathers. Other than that though, they're mainly naked, or have got their togas or so on. But the thing that really make the Maasai stand out is the shield designs, which I've based on various books I have, and Wargames Foundry themselves have quite a good little page on the Maasai where you can pick up some ideas for shield designs in that as well. So yeah, really enjoy painting these. It's good to get back into the African theatre, and hopefully I'll get a game with them fairly soon. And finally, painting wise, I got this group of 15mm Plains Indians painted up for my Pony Wars project. I've got really quite a large collection of figures now for that, but still nowhere near enough to play a game. So I'm thinking what I might do is give the rules a go anyway, and it will give me an idea of what I need to get done, and also it might be because figures show up almost at random depending on what cards you draw. It's possible that I might be able to get through a game successfully without running out of figures anyway. So I might do that in the near future and see how that goes. These are again Blue Moon figures, which are the main constituent of my collection, and I have painted up this bag once before, but previously I'm aware now that I'd made a few kind of minor errors. In particular, a lot of the things that are trailing from the headdresses I painted up. I think I predominantly painted them up as red sort of ribbons before, but I realise now, looking through Osprey books and so on, having slowly built up my collection, that they actually wore a lot of ermine tails. I wasn't even aware that ermine existed in North America. I thought they were a European creature, but yeah, apparently they wore a lot of ermine. So not just the tails, you know, as sort of tassels on their headdress, but also as fur caps as well. I'd always thought before that that was buffalo skin, but in fact the figures that you can see there, you might be able to make out that do have buffalo horns. The horns are actually separated from the buffalo, rather than you know, the sort of horns being still attached to the fur of the buffalo, and then they're just inserted into ermine caps and so on. So yeah, a little bit more accurate this time, and again, pleased with the way they turned out. You know, they're not brilliantly painted figures, but I think they look pretty good as a group. Right, okay, so that now is all of my painted figures that I've got to show you, but as I said earlier, I have just made a ton of purchases recently, so let's make a start on going through all that. It's hard to know where to begin really, but let's start with the various sets of Wargames rules that I've bought recently. So couldn't resist picking this up, having watched a YouTube channel, I think he goes by the name of Bill's Wargames World. He's called Bill Molyneux, lives over on the east coast of America, and he often puts up battle reports of games that he plays with a group of his friends over there, and they're always really spectacular games. But he plays Pony Wars, but recently they played a game, or they played a couple of games now, of the Sands of the Sudan, which is a really old set of rules, inspired by Peter Gilder, who has long since departed us. I haven't got any figures for this. I don't know whether I'll ever get around to collecting armies for it, but funnily enough, I've got Blood on the Nile, the black powder supplement for the Sudan. It's just a period I'm interested in without ever actually having played it. These rules, I would imagine, are very dated now. There's lots of tables and so on that you have to refer to, and there are random event cards, so it comes with a selection of random event cards, and they're available through Caliber Books. They've been revived and reprinted, and they're now sold by Caliber Books. So that's something for a future project maybe. Then I also finally got around to purchasing What a Cowboy. So you may remember that last year I was eagerly anticipating it being released, and while I was waiting, I got out my collection of Western figures and terrain, and played 4 different sets of rules and compared them all, told you which one I thought was my favourite, and then I was going to do a review of What a Cowboy and you know, incorporated into that series. And it only came out, I think What a Cowboy came out around March this year, and by that stage I hadn't lost my enthusiasm for Western, but you know, I had other things on my mind, so I left it a little while. I'm always a little bit reluctant to join in the kind of initial fever that seems to accompany Wargames rules, and Too Fat Lardy's productions in particular. Just give a little bit of time for the dust to settle before I actually invest, and so on. So I haven't even got around to reading these yet, but I will do now. I will at some stage have a game with them and try and recreate that scenario that I played with 4 different sets of rules before, and see how it fits in. Again, there are another sort of rules that are card driven, you know, which I do enjoy card driven games, but they do tend to, for some reason, the cards seem to disappear before the rules do. So it's often the case, as years go by, that you can get the rules, but you can't get the cards to go with the rules. I'm never quite sure why that is, because you would think that they printed an equal number of the two. But anyway, What a Cowboy, another thing that won't be in the distant future, it will be in the fairly near future. What else have I got? I've got the new supplement for Soldiers of Napoleon, which is a supplement for the Peninsular War. Now, what I'm thinking of doing at the moment, and I don't know whether it will work, is I was so kind of pleased with the 2mm armies that I printed for Strength and Honour, the ancient set of rules, that I wanted to do something else in 2mm, and Project Wargaming have a very nice collection of Napoleonic figures, so I'm wondering whether I can use these rules with 2mm figures. I don't see why not. It's just going to need a little bit of you know, design with things like distances and scales, you know, obviously scale, but distances is really the main thing, ranges and movement factors and so on. And again, this is another, I haven't really looked through this book. It strikes me doing this now that it hasn't got a great deal in the way of colour pictures, but it's more for the army list that you buy this anyway. Now, the other set of rules that I bought were a set that I've had on, you know, I've had on my radar for quite a while now, and I was finally prompted to get them, having watched a video on a channel called Port Temov, which I would recommend you subscribing to. So that's Port, P-O-R-T, Temov, T-E-M-O-V. Again, another American YouTube channel. But he's recently got into gladiatorial games, and he decided to use Sons of Mars. Again, long-term viewers of my channel will know that I played a lot of juggler at one time, so I'm pretty sure that I can use this set of rules with my jugular figures, which are a very unique scale. They're massive, probably about 32mm, but I have to admit I've succumbed to some more figure purchases, and this set of rules I got through North Star, and they sold it as you could buy it as a bundle with some figures and various other things. So let's show you those. Okay, so you could buy a bundle of the rules and a Sarissa model of an arena. So this is, you know, okay for fighting gladiatorial battles. Well, obviously it's not your Colosseum type arena, but it will, you know, it'll have seating and you know, the actual pit itself and various cages and so on. So that'll be all right. It won't really work, I don't think it will anyway, for my large jugular figures, so that's why I thought I would get into some 28mm figures. And the North Star bundle also included, you could buy 8 figures, so I think they're sort of random selections. So I've got some Retiarii and a Laqueus. I'm not quite sure what the Laqueus is. Looks as though he's armed with a spear and a whip or a lasso, and the Retiarius have got the trident and nets, the classic trident and nets. But the other group I got was spectators, which is okay. You know, I would rather have had Gladiators themselves, but I've got 4 figures that can now go in that stand. And again, North Star were very kind to send me a freebie figure, and the figure they sold me, they didn't sell me, they gave me free, is some kind of ancient slinger. So again, not sure he'll fit in well in a sort of gladiator context, but it's always nice to get a free figure. Now I went further than that. I've got some more gladiator figures from another company that I'll show you now. So I showed you some models, ex-Steve Barber earlier, that I got through CP Models, and Steve Barber also used to do a range of gladiators and spectators and so on, and again CP Models have not only acquired that range, but they've also extended it with some of their own figures. So I bought a lot of those. I won't show you them all, but just take some out of the bags to give you a rough idea of what they're like. So they're all kinds of spectators and adjudicators and ritual kind of priests and that kind of thing. Lots and lots of varieties, and once again I've been very lucky recently that CP Models threw in a freebie. So they've given me a model of the Emperor Aurelian, who would work, pretty well. Not sure what he thought of gladiatorial games actually, but he'll work very well as an emperor in the arena, or indeed in other games as well. So the reason I went for these, that Paul Temoff, who I mentioned earlier, was talking about, it was hard to get a model of a scissors, which is a particular type of gladiator. So I did pick up a scissors. I got some Christians there, obviously being thrown to the lions, and I probably won't be able to find the scissors now. Show you what it looks like. This comes of not preparing my videos, just doing things haphazardly. Yeah, I'm afraid you'll have to forego. Go to the website and you'll be able to see what it looks like anyway. Unless it's in here. Let's get this bag out just to show you some, and then hopefully. Yeah, there he is. There's the scissors. But I like these models. I think they're very nice. Very nice indeed. I think they call this guy Sagittarius. Yeah, so I've got more than enough gladiators now. I think the ones that were, so as I say, most of these Steve Barber used to retail, but the ones that CP Models have extended the range, and I think their ones are the ones with the detachable, the variable heads, so you can change the appearance of the figures. So lots with bare heads and some with helmeted heads and so on, that fit on those particular figures. So I think these ones aren't Steve Barber. I think these are CP Models originals. Okay, more figures purchases to show you, so let's just pack these away and I'll get some more out. Okay, one of the figures in that lot that I just put in front of the camera but I didn't get out, from CP Models, was this chap here, who I think is called or titled the Champion of Rome. So he's a mounted gladiator. Comes with a separate shield and sword. Very nicely decorated shield. I don't know if you can see that there. So he, wouldn't really have worked on his own in the arena. But he's the only mounted figure that CP Models do. So I went to Wargames Foundry, who do a packet of gladiators, oh, I can't call them gladiators, on horseback. I think they're known as equites. So I've got another 3 figures here. Mounted gladiators. So they're going to be something a little bit different for the game. Again, very nicely ornamented shields and things. They should paint up, make very nice figures. Come with a set of brass spears, and so they're Wargames Foundry. And while I was on the Wargames Foundry site, and I will confess to making an error here, is I thought I would need some beasts, so I bought a pack of lions, which they had on their gladiator page, but I knew I had this lion already from Congo, because they're kind of the semi-official supplier of figures for Congo, and this is the lion that they had in their pack for Congo. So I knew I already had this one painted up, and didn't see any problem in having another one. But then going through a lot of my lead mounting recently, lo and behold, I discovered that I already had this group of 3 lions that I'd purchased, for my collection of African figures, and haven't got around to painting yet. So I've now got 6 lions, which will be interchangeable between the Roman arena and Darkest Africa. So that isn't yet the end of my figure purchases. You'll be dismayed to hear. Still got some more to show you. Should have said a moment ago, sorry. Wargames Foundry also very generously sent me a free figure. So this is some kind of Roman legionary, but he will be ideal as a guard, maybe to that Marcus Aurelian Emperor figure that I showed you earlier. So again, thank you very much, Wargames Foundry. Doing well out of freebies this month. So I earlier on showed you the last group of mounted Berbers that I'd painted, that I got from Empress 1898 miniatures. And at the time I made that purchase a year ago, they didn't have any dismounted Berbers. So I have shown you previously a purchase I made from a company called Castaway Arts in Australia of a lot of dismounted Berbers, and I've just made a start on painting those now. But lo and behold, in the interval, 1898 have now produced a range of dismounted Berbers, so I couldn't not have those. So I've purchased these as well, and by the time I eventually get these painted, I should have quite a considerable Berber force to fight alongside my Tuaregs against what is currently a very vastly outnumbered Foreign Legion army, which I'll then have to I've got the figures, I've just got to get them painted. But yeah, there's some, these in particular I like, the casualty figures. It's always good to have a few casualties dotted around the table. Like that one, it's a bit like the always reminds me of the figure of the Warlord Games figure of the Lancer, Crimean War Lancer, falling down. Oh yeah, that was another bit of news I picked up on. Not something I've acquired, but apparently at the recent Warlord Open Day, they announced that the next two supplements for Black Powder are going to be Crimean War and the Boer War. So it'll probably be a year or two before they come out, but I'll definitely be getting the Crimean War supplement, although I'll be using the Eureka 18mm figures rather than their own range. But yeah, so that's Empress figures, 1898 Berbers, and I do think that is the last of my figure purchases. So let's now go on to books and DVDs. Okay, this is a DVD that was released about a month or so ago now. It is kind of Wargames related. It's a French version of the Three Musketeers, and a lot of people wargame the Three Musketeers. I'm thinking of doing it myself, especially using the Osprey rule set on guard. And I was just interested in getting this film anyway, because I'm into a good swashbuckling movie, and I can highly recommend this film. It is brilliant. Obviously it's in French with English subtitles, and it's a two-part film, so the second part won't be released for about a year, I think. But it's a story in its own right. It ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger, so there is a continuation to the story in the second film, but it works as a standalone film. But the thing that I particularly liked was the sort of period feel, the accuracy of the clothing and the buildings, and it was all very good. And there's a lot of fight scenes in it, a lot of duels and fighting between the Musketeers and the Cardinal's Guard and so on, and they're really exciting, as well as the plot being very. I think it's very close to the book, as I've read the book many years ago, and I think it's closer to the actual plot of the book than a great many of the intervening films from Hollywood and so on. But yeah, really enjoyed this. It's not a problem for me watching film with subtitles. I can understand a little bit of the French as well, but that's the only thing that might put some people off, but it doesn't worry me at all. So definitely a film worth getting. Another DVD I got recently in a charity shop, The Halls of Montezuma, starring Richard Widmark. I think 1950s, definitely. I think around 1953, something like that. I've watched it. It's very good. Yeah, I enjoyed watching it. It's funnily enough, it's by the same director, Lewis Milestone, as the original, much earlier, All Quiet on the Western Front, the 1930 Hollywood version of All Quiet on the Western Front. And you can see some kind of parallels in that, although it's not based on this isn't based on a novel as far as I know. It's kind of episodic, and it jumps backwards and forwards between the filming of the fighting, and the fighting's taking place on a kind of generic Pacific island. They mention Tarawa and they mention Guadalcanal, so it's obviously set after that, but they don't actually specify what the island is that they're fighting over. But it jumps from the fighting back to the sort of pre-war lives of some of the characters in the film, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty good film. It also incorporates a lot of genuine World War II footage. That to me didn't work quiet as well. I mean, obviously it saved them having to film things like airstrikes and artillery strikes and so on. But if you know anything about the Pacific theatre and you've watched documentaries, you will have seen that footage over and over, and you will immediately know, oh yeah, that is on Iwo Jima and that is on Tarawa and so on. So it sort of spoils it a little bit in that respect, that you're aware that the footage isn't accurate to the island. That it's meant to be it's a fictitious island, so doesn't have to be accurate as such, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I enjoyed that. It was good. It only cost me about, I think, £2.50, so it was good, well worth spending that amount of money. Right then, I also recently got a load of books in charity shops, as is my wont. This one I found in a charity shop in the town centre. Napoleon's Wars, Wellington's Army by Ian Fletcher. I think I've seen this on sale on Amazon and so on, and I wouldn't have invested in it at its full price, but I thought it was worth picking up cheaply. It's got some, a couple of decent plates in, like this one, but a lot of it is in black and white. There's a few other colour prints in here, such as that, colour photographs and so on, and that one. I think there's one other plate that I came across when I was thumbing through it earlier. Oh, there's one. That's the third one that I hadn't seen. So yeah, I think it's worth having. I'm not going to let it, leave it lying idle on the shelf if you see it going for a knockdown price. And then I've got a load of other stuff, but all the rest of the stuff I got in another bookshop that I visit occasionally, which is in a place called Plympton, which isn't far outside of Plymouth. And every single time I go there, they have Osprey Publications in there going for £2.50. So regardless of whether I'm into the period or not, I will pick them up and add them to my Osprey collection, which is now beginning to burst my bookshelves. So I'm going to have to do something about finding them another home. But yeah, I picked up the Northwest Frontier, which I'm definitely keen on. So some of these plates, I think it's that one, is in it's used to illustrate the Men Who Would Be Kings rule set. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So this is quite an old title now, but it's definitely worth having. I also picked up Colonial American Troops 1610 to 1774, Volume 1. So I don't wargame this at all yet, but never say never. And as I say, for £2.50, I couldn't resist buying it. And then, sorry, look in the camera. And then also in the same shop at the same time, I picked up a load of other things. I spotted this immediately because I was painting the Maasai figures that I showed you earlier at the time. Picked it up and discovered it's a copy of a couple of, well, it's two books in one by Ryder Haggard, King Solomon's Mines, and another book he wrote called Alan Quatermain. And so Quatermain is the central character, in fact is the narrator of the story of King Solomon's Mines, but I hadn't realised that Ryder Haggard wrote a whole load of books with featuring Alan Quatermain. Well, there are 18 of them. So the publisher's actually given a suggestion of the sequence in which you should read them. So where's King Solomon's Mines? And there, it's 15. So prior to King Solomon, the period that King Solomon's Mines is set in, Quatermain appears in 14 other books written by Ryder Haggard. I had no idea of that, no idea at all. Yeah, I'm reading it at the moment. I have to say, it's remarkable, even you know, being a fairly elderly person, how much how kind of offensive I find some of the language in this book. You know, it is very the use of language would be deemed racist, no doubt, nowadays. But it's also, it's got a lot of other implied or even expressed kind of values, you know, that are very Victorian. I think Haggard wrote King Solomon's Mines in 1885, but the language is very reflective of its time. And if you've ever seen any of the there's been at least 4, I think, film versions of King Solomon's Mines. None of them bear much resemblance to this book. I mean, a characteristic one, and again, you could almost say this is misogynistic, is right at the start. Quatermain says, you know, Quatermain's words, but Haggard actually wrote it, that you won't find a single petticoat in this story. There is no female interest, you could call it, which there very much is in the films. There's a lot of romantic, you know, sort of leads in the film versions. Definitely isn't in this. It's all men doing men's stuff on the, you know, in unexplored parts of Africa. So, you know, very, very much a book of its time, but it's not a bad story. It's not a bad story. Then in the same bookshop, I also got The Escape of the Amethyst by C.E. Lucas Phillips. Now, Lucas Phillips was the author of The Cockleshell Heroes, which was turned into a film. The story of the escape of the Amethyst from the Yangtze River was also made into a film called The Yangtze Incident, but that film wasn't based on this book, although I'm sure the story is going to be, you know, just as vividly written and so on. But yeah, looking forward to reading this. And the Amethyst has a lot of connections to Plymouth. It was a Devonport-based ship and broken up in Plymouth eventually. A story that I'm quite interested in. Also, local interest is Plymouths Forgotten War. So it's the story of the Civil War and Plymouth's, the siege of Plymouth and so on. Written by a Plymouthian, and I haven't started to read this yet. I have a feeling this is a book that was recommended to me by a friend of mine recently, and just by chance I've found it going cheap in a charity bookshop. But yeah, this is going to be worth reading, and I may eventually get around to doing a video. I know I've promised it to you in the past about the siege of Plymouth. The trouble is that virtually everything, you know, the whole area, I mean, my house where I'm talking to you from now, you know, was on a hill that the Royalists planted their artillery on when they were besieging Plymouth at one point. But you know, everything is under suburban housing and so on now, so there's very little, you know, to film as such to make a video interesting. But I'll find a way of doing it eventually. Might have to paint up some figures, some armies to have as you know, sort of while I talk about the siege of Plymouth. And finally, in that bookshop, charity bookshop, I picked up this. It's a photographic. It says it's a photographic history of the dreadnoughts, but it's more really about their construction and so on. Lots of pictures of dreadnoughts being laid down in various dockyards, but the subject I'm interested in, so I thought I would get hold of it. And that, I think, end of a very long video, is all my painted figures, all my purchased figures, all my purchased DVDs and books, and everything that I've got to say to you. So thanks very much for watching, and see you on the next video. Bye for now.